Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be reviewing the two experiential sources that Locke appeals to explain where our ideas and knowledge come from. So we're going to start out by looking at this idea of the mind as a blank slate. This will lead to a discussion of, well, if it is sort of blank when we come into the world, what provides it with its ideas? And we'll look at Locke's empiricism, and then we'll review that simplicity argument that we looked at before. And then we're going to distinguish between the two experiential sources that Locke posits in order to help explain the sort of richness of our ideas. There is sensation, but then there's also reflection. So far, we've looked at Locke's arguments against the existence of innate principles, where that's understood as both innate knowledge and innate ideas. So he says, look, there, as a matter of fact, isn't this sort of universal assent. There's no idea, no knowledge that is universally had by all people. Because he says, look at the example of children. A lot of the sort of supposed examples of universally assented to ideas are ideas that children don't have and that they don't assent to because they don't understand them yet. He says similar things about severely mentally disabled persons, oftentimes lack certain ideas and fail to assent to these examples of universal truths. After rejecting innate ideas, then, Locke describes the alternative view as a view that the mind begins as a blank slate. So instead of being born into the world with all this knowledge and these ideas sort of written on the slate in the book of your mind, you're born with this sort of empty pages just ready to be written on. But if the mind enters the world as a blank slate, the question arises, what is the source of all our ideas and knowledge? Because clearly now, I'm no longer a blank slate. So the question becomes, what's the mechanism by which this information gets into our mind? So what is it that writes those ideas, those beliefs, that knowledge? What serves the function of the pen, so to speak? In Locke's own words, he says, "To this I answer in one word, from experience. Our knowledge is founded in all that, and from that it ultimately derives itself. Our observation employed either about external sensible objects or about the internal operations of our minds perceived and reflected on by ourselves is that which supplies all the materials of thinking. These two are the fountains of knowledge from which all the ideas we have, or can naturally have, do spring." Locke is suggesting a kind of empiricism that we've talked about. This is that philosophical view that stresses the importance of experience, and especially sense experience, in accounting for the origin of our understanding and knowledge of things. But remember, there's two theses we should distinguish between. There's concept empiricism that says the source of all of our concepts of things, our ideas of things. And then there's the knowledge empiricism that says experience is sort of what serves as the evidence or ground of all of our knowledge about the world. All right, so why should we believe empiricism? Well, we talked about Locke's simplicity argument in favor of empiricism. He says, look, human beings have various kinds of ideas and knowledge. He says all our ideas and knowledge are capable of being produced via experience. But if experience can account for all of that knowledge and ideas, all that stuff that's written in that book, then we don't need to posit any kind of innate ideas or knowledge. It's just unnecessary. And we shouldn't posit any hypothesis beyond what we need. We shouldn't make things more complicated than we need to. So simple theories are better. Thus, probably all our ideas and knowledge are produced via experience, since this is the simplest explanation. In order to make good on this argument, though, Locke needs to defend that premise, that all our ideas and knowledge are capable of being produced via experience. So first, let's consider sensation. This is a faculty that produces experiences by which we perceive external objects. So some examples, look, usually this is thought of in terms of the so-called five senses. There's sight, touch, hearing, taste, and smell. These are faculties we have that create in us an experience that makes us aware of physical objects like tables, chairs, trains, cars, computers, microphones. So for instance, I look down at my desk and vision, my sight, that faculty, somehow produces in me a sensory experience of a red rectangular object. And that experience of color, shape, textures, flavors, we usually then attribute those features that we experience to the external physical object itself. I experience that red rectangular sensation, and then I come to believe that the table outside my mind is rectangular and is red. Now notice, Locke, remember, is not going to be giving us an explanation for the physical mechanisms by which these sensations are produced. So he's not going to be studying how light reflects off of surfaces, how it hits our eyes, anything that's going on in the brain. That's not his goal. He takes for granted that we have these sensations. Moreover, he's not going to investigate the nature of these sensations. Are they physical or are they immaterial? He says, look, I'm taking it for granted. Look, we have these sensations. Now, I want to say, how do we get from those sensations to ideas and knowledge, etc.? Note, these sensations are not the same thing as ideas or concepts. So I can entertain the idea of purple even when no purple sensation is present. So I can close my eyes and imagine the color purple. I have the idea of purple before my mind, but I'm not actually sensing purple. Sensations are also supposed to be the source of these ideas on Locke's view. And so if sensations are the source of our ideas, it's thereby important that the senses are not the same thing as the ideas, because ideas can't sort of explain themselves. So sensations are the causes of our ideas. So Hume, another empiricist that we'll look at later, would later describe ideas not as sensations, but as sort of pale copies of sensory experiences. So the idea is, I look at a purple thing and I have the sensation, and then my mind is able to sort of photocopy that sensation. And the photocopy is a bit sort of faded and pale. It's not quite as vivid, Hume says. And so now I can close my eyes, and even though I can't sense purple, I can sort of bring that pale copy that my mind is sort of filed away in a filing cabinet, and I can sort of have that before my mind, even when I don't sense a purple thing. Right. Notice also that sensations are not the same thing as beliefs or knowledge. I can believe that there's a green frog in front of me, even when my eyes are closed and I don't have the sensation. So you can have the belief without the sensation. You can also have the sensation without the belief, because you might know that you're suffering an illusion. For instance, you might, if you have jaundice in the eye and everything looks yellow, if you know that you have jaundice and that sort of color and everything, you might not believe that the things in front of you are yellow, even though you have the sensation. Remember, there's this other aspect of experience that is going to help supply the mind with its ideas and knowledge, according to Locke. It's what he calls reflection. The other fountain from which experience furnishes the understanding with ideas is the perception of the operation of our own mind within us as it's employed about the ideas it has gotten. So here the idea is, sensation is about our perception of external objects, the experiences that make us aware of external objects. But reflection is about a faculty that perceives not external objects, but internal objects of our mind, so to speak. So this source of ideas every man has wholly in himself, and though it is not sense, as having nothing to do with external objects, so it's not an awareness of tables and chairs, yet it is very like it, and might properly enough be called internal sense. So we have experiences that make us aware of the things going on in our mind, in addition to an awareness of things outside of our mind. So there's external sense and internal sense. The term operations of the mind, he uses in a large sense as comprehending not barely the actions of the mind about its ideas. So it's not just like when we move from one idea to the next and thereby get an experience of reasoning, but rather also some sort of passions arising sometimes from them, such as the satisfaction or uneasiness arising from any thought. Right, so let's consider this reflection. This is a faculty that produces a kind of inner awareness or perception of the operations of our own mind. And this is sometimes nowadays called introspection, when you introspect on your own mind. It gives us a kind of inner perception of our own ideas, of thinking, doubting, believing, reasoning, knowing, willing. I not only can believe something, I can become aware of and I can experience my believing it. That experience of my believing it is the sort of inner perception. That's the reflection. It also gives us an inner perception of our own passions or reactions to certain sensations and ideas. For instance, reflection will give us a perceptual experience of enjoyment, anger, or disgust. So when I eat liver, I have a sensation of a certain taste. So then, when I have that sensation, I might also have a reaction to it and thereby experience my own mind's disgust at that taste. So the experience of disgust is a kind of awareness of how my own mind has reacted to that taste. Now, note that our reflective experiences are not the same thing as ideas or concepts. Again, so I'm not currently eating liver, so I don't currently have a sensation of that taste, and I also don't currently experience feel and reaction to that taste. So I'm not currently feeling disgusted. Nonetheless, I'm still thinking about that disgust that I would experience if I were to eat liver. So I don't feel that disgust now, but I'm still thinking about that disgust. And because of that, I'm entertaining the idea of that disgust, that sort of copy of that disgust, without actually having the reflective experience or the passion itself. Now, of course, you could be disgusted even not just by a taste, you could be disgusted by an idea. Maybe you hate liver so much that even when you just think about it, you don't actually taste liver, you just think about it, you also just are like, oh, just, you might experience that reaction, even just the idea. I don't do that. I experience disgust when I eat liver, but I don't experience disgust when I just think about liver. But I do have the idea of that disgust. Yet again, it might be helpful to think of my idea of disgust as that kind of pale copy of the inner experience. So using sensation and reflection, Locke wants to show, he says, when we've taken a fully survey of them, our sensations and reflections, and their several modes, combinations, and relations, we shall find to contain all our whole stock of ideas, and that we have nothing in our minds which did not come from one of these two ways. He says, let anyone examine his own thoughts and thoroughly search into his understanding, and however great a mass of knowledge he imagines lodged there, he will, upon taking a strict view, see that he does not have any idea in his mind, but what one of these two have imprinted, though perhaps with infinite variety compounded and enlarged by the understanding, as we shall see hereafter. So now he's saying, from these two sources, these two kinds of experience, so outer experience and inner experience, he's going to say how he can give rise and explain all the ideas in our mind and all that knowledge. Thus, there's no need to posit any kind of innate ideas or knowledge. So that's it for this video. See you next time. Bye-bye.